And he tells me, you know, if you want to come back on the other side of this thing and as someone your parents recognize, then you have to change the prison from the inside out. You have to be the change you want to see in the world you're going into. And the last words this man ever said to me, you know, the last 4 words he ever spoke, he said, be a coffee bean. And that's my slogan. That's my motto that I have in life. In that time period from 2004 to 2015, I'm going to go on a crime spree in the city of Dallas, where I become the public enemy number 1 for these burglaries that are going on in the uptown neighborhood of Dallas. I become the guy they're going after. And, you know, 2008, 3 years into the crime spree, I get picked up by the Dallas SWAT team. A year later, they sentenced me to life in prison. And it was in that time. Here's another fork in the road in life. You know, the fork in the road we just went on is UBS. Touched meth for the first time. 18 months later, I'm living on the streets and I'm homeless and I could become a criminal. So the life of crime is over. I've been sentenced to life in prison, May 18th, 2009, another fork in the road. After the trial is over, they sentence me to life. They bring me to the side, this little side room. They bring my parents to the other side. It's a bulletproof glass right there. And my mom has this conversation with me. She tells me, Damon, you can't get into one of these white hate groups, one of these Aryan Brotherhood type of gangs. You were never raised to be a racist. You're not going to start now. And she said, you know, no gangs, no tattoos. She said, that's the rule. She said, you come back as the man we raised or don't come back at all. Scott, man, I don't know if you've ever, I don't know if you ever looked at a prison show or prison movies or anything like that, but
many
guys
times
are tatted up, man. And the gang stuff is through the roof. And I'm going to the worst part of the prison system where everybody's got life, the hardest part of prison. And my mom has just laid down, drawn this line in the sand. She's like, do you understand this debt you're going to pay? You come back as the man we raised or don't come back at all. This means that if I become like the prison, which is the norm into a prison, especially an environment like that for a guy like me, I can't come home. I don't have a home to come back to. Without this conversation, I don't have this hammer hanging over my head, or maybe more aptly would be to define it as a sword hanging over my head that'll chop my head off because I want to go home one day. Now, I don't know how I'm going to keep this promise I made to my mom on May 18, 2009, because in the 2-month period from when I'm waiting on the prison transport bus to come pick me up after my trial, I run into this guy in Dallas County Jail named Mr. Jackson, this older black man.
All right, hold on. Before you go to Mr. Jackson, I have one question. I'm sorry, because I know we're on a time restraint, but I want to talk this through real quick. I want parents to listen to this one thing, because it can feel empty and lost when you are practicing and doing the things that you know are right, even when the people around you aren't. And your mom held the line, and the line didn't work until this fork in the road. When she looked at you, weren't ready to listen to that message until that day. She'd been saying the same message over and over again, but you weren't ready to actually be open to it. Maybe God hadn't made you open to it yet, but you were open in that moment. And I just wanted to make that comment because that's all I could think about is how many times as parents do we say, I listened to your Ed Milet podcast the other day with my kids in the car as we were going to a soccer tournament as I was researching for this. And my son was asking me, my 13-year-old was asking me questions about your life. When are you interviewing him, Dad? What's that going to be like? And why do you think he made that decision? And the line that mom drew in the sand gave you a standard that they had always had, but you hadn't followed. And I feel like that has attracted you to people in your life that are always maybe the best at what they do. That line was a standard though. And I was so impressed by your mom's power and her ability to keep functioning. I know parents are imperfect, but at the end of the day, that was a great moment.
Yeah, no, I think that's a terrific observation, first of all. And that's cool that your kid was listening to it too, man. Anytime someone will share my message with their child, that's like the greatest compliment in the world, because we want the best for our kids. Happened to me not too long ago. This lady reached out to me on Instagram, and she said, hey, you don't know me, but my dad said that you just shared your message with his team. And he's sending me the video of it because he said, I need to hear your story. And so I'm looking forward to hearing this message. That woman is Nick Saban's daughter. So whenever I got done speaking to Alabama that night, his daughter reached out to me on Instagram through the message the message portal to tell me that my dad just called me on the way home from work. The best college football coach in history, arguably, told his daughter, we had this guy come talk to the team, and this is a message you need to hear. You telling me that you have your son doing that, greatest compliment in the world, man.
Both boys listened. One fell asleep, the oldest, the 16-year-old, but he listened to more. He just can't ever tell me he's listening, but the youngest one was listening. And I'm telling you, it's moments like that, that when you're doing this and you don't get, you will bust your butt and you will work. But in the space that you're in today, you will often not get a lot of big wins. You get little victories along the way. And just knowing someone's helping to spread the word or listen or do something in a company or whatever it may be, it does make a difference. So Mr. Jackson is who you meet in the county jail while you're waiting. Am I correct?
Absolutely. And this is like a good spot to I tell people all the time that messengers in life, God never just reached down and put his hand on my head and said, Damon, you're healed. It didn't work out like that for me, Scott. What God has done is put people in my life. And in my life, these people, they look different. I mean, from different times, wherever you are on the road of life. My mom and my dad, there were certainly people that God has put in my life. Teachers, coaches, people in the community of Port Arthur that helped raise me. As I got older and went down different roads, people came at me from different angles and that looked different than me. One of them is this Black Muslim man in Dallas County Jail. There's going to be other ones throughout my story, but here's the key. You have to be receptive to all of God's messengers to receive all of God's messages. And God's not just going to pick people that look like you, that believe the same as you, that come from the same background as you. In fact, He's going to pick a lot of people that don't have anything in common with you, because this is the way we become the best versions of ourselves, and we become accepting of people for their differences, because strength is in our diversity. Some of the best lessons we learn in life are from people that have been down a road that we don't necessarily want to go down, like Nick Saban. Nick Saban told me, Damon, good players learn from their own mistakes and great players learn from the mistakes of others. So there's Mr. Jackson. We could call him Coach Jackson, like Coach Saban. Mr. Jackson, Dallas County Jail, this older Black Muslim man. He pulls me aside. He's telling me that prison is going to be like a pot of boiling water. He's telling me the dynamic in prison about race. The gangs run everything. So you get to fight all the white gangs first. Then you'll fight the black gangs. Then you can earn the right to walk alone if you establish yourself. And he tells me this really important thing about fighting, because he said you're going to do a lot of fighting, but just remember this: you don't have to win all your fights. You just have to fight all your fights. You don't have to win all your fights, but you have to fight all your fights. This is great, Scott. This means that some days I'm going to win and some days I'm going to lose. And it doesn't matter whether or not I win or lose. What matters is, do I get back up? And this is true in life. No one counts your wins and losses but you. You're the one that watches that kind of stuff. But people do watch to see, hey, that person got knocked down. Did they get back up? And as long as you keep getting back up and keep facing your adversity every single day, you're winning. You're always winning. But when he tells me this in 2009, look, I'm stunned, man. I just, the amount of violence and terror that he's telling me I'm walk into. And that's when he said, let me break it down for you a different way. He said, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. He said, anything we put into this pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. And he said, I'm going to put 3 things in this pot of boiling water and watch how they change: a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. So here's where I first heard the story of the coffee bean. It was the summer of 2009 in Dallas County Jail, exactly 10 years before John Gordon and I wrote the book, The Coffee Bean, in the summer of 2019. This is the origin story where it came from. And so he's telling me a carrot in the pot of boiling water called prison goes in hard but becomes soft, gets beat, gets robbed, gets raped, may get killed. You don't want to be the carrot. An egg in the same pot of boiling water goes in with a soft liquid inside. But in the water, the liquid inside becomes hardened. He said, like your heart becomes hardened when you become an egg. You become incapable of giving or receiving love. And he said, if you're incapable of giving or receiving love in the place you're going to, you're institutionalized and you don't come back as someone your parents recognize. And then he told me, he said, the coffee bean in the same pot of boiling water changes the pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. He said, it's the only thing that can change the water, by the way. The eggs are changed by the water. The carrots are changed by the water. But the coffee bean changes the water because it is the change agent. He said, as the agent of change, and it'll change the water because the power is inside the coffee bean. And he said, just like the power's inside you. The power's inside you to change that pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. And he tells me, if you want to come back on the other side of this thing and as someone your parents recognize, then you have to change the prism from the inside out. You have to be the change you want to see in the world you're going into. And the last words this man ever said to me, the last 4 words he ever spoke, he said, be a coffee bean. And that's my slogan. That's my motto that I have in life. Because from that day on, I picked up a message that anybody that's 5 to 95 years old can fully grasp and understand, because we understand the physical changes that happen to these 3 things in a pot of boiling water. It's something we can see even as a child. When I've talked to younger kids and they get it, man, because they've done, they've made hard-boiled eggs at Easter time with their moms or their guardians, whoever watches over them. They understand the concept of it. And that message hit me when I got it in 2009. And I thought to myself, man, if I can harness this power inside me, it doesn't matter what environment I go into, no matter what adversity, no matter what prison I have to go into in life, I won't just survive. I could thrive if I kept the power inside me. And that was the message that really turned it around for me, Scott. Because prison was a pot of boiling water. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. I tell people all the time, the only language everybody speaks in prison is violence. Man, violence is the only language you become fluent in. Either you speak violence or someone speaks it to you, but you become fluent in violence. And where I went to, the part of prison I had to go to where the life sentence people go, it was the most dangerous part of prison. Partly because the reason why the life sentence building is so dangerous is because there's people that have lost hope. A lot of people have lost hope. Hope is so important in life. It's like this. Hey, have you seen Shawshank? You ever watch the movie Shawshank?
Yeah. Great movie.
Great movie. So, and here's the question I ask people. When you watch Shawshank, do you think it's a show about Andy Dufresne, Tim Robbins' character? Is it about him or is it about Red, Morgan Freeman's character? And there's no right or wrong answer, but when I watch it after going through prison, I think it's Red's story. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's Red's story, not Andy's story. Now, Red is narrating and he's talking about this Andy Dufresne guy, but Red is a dead man. Red is a dead man because Red has lost hope. And it's like when Brooks got out on parole. Remember, Brooks gets out, he lasts a couple of weeks and he hangs himself, works at the grocery store. He hangs it. He's an old man, can't function in the real world again. He writes the letter back to the guys on the inside. Red even turns to Andy. He says, Andy, I'm an institutional man. I don't know if I could hack it out there. He even says the words to Andy. Hope is a dangerous thing. Imagine living in a world where you feel like hope is a dangerous thing. We all need hope, Scott. Everybody has to have hope. And if you lose hope, it's the darkest world to be in because anything can take hope's place. And usually it's not something good. But Andy tells Red, get busy living or get busy dying. And so Shawshank, to me, after living in a prison and going through a very similar experience to what's in the movie, Shawshank is about Red. It's Red's story because he's telling the story about the guy that saved his life because Andy gave Red life again. Hope is something we all must have. And when I lived in a world where there was a lack of hope, it was a very evil, very dark place. But I was able to come in there as this positive light. But by the way, Jackson told me you are going to be a light that people want to extinguish because that world doesn't want a light in there. They want it to be dark in there.
You've always been that light. So the thing is I think, what I find interesting again is the fork in the road is you just identified through the story that you've always been a coffee bean and a change agent. You had to change to start being a change agent for good because you had been a change agent for the things that weren't good. Like so many people that make destructive decisions in their lives. And so many of our listeners are the same people, but there's a pinnacle moment and you made that adjustment.